The day Sophia Ziegler spilled coffee down her blouse 20 minutes before the most important presentation of her career was the same day she caught Caleb Barrington looking at her for the first time. Not that she had noticed his gaze lingering on her before she was far too preoccupied with her role as events coordinator at Barrington Publishing, one of the country's most prestigious independent publishing houses. But as she frantically dabbed at the brown stains spreading across her cream silk blouse in the office kitchenette, a deep voice startled her. "Need some help with that?" Sophia spun around, clutching a wad of paper towels to her chest, to find herself face to face with the company's elusive owner. Caleb Barrington stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the exit, a hint of amusement in his steel blue eyes. "Mr. Barrington, I'm so sorry, I was just—" She stammered, her cheeks flushing crimson. "The presentation is in 15 minutes and I've ruined my blouse." "I think we keep spare shirts in the HR closet for emergencies," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man who commanded a publishing empire worth millions. "And please call me Caleb. Mr. Barrington was my father." Sophia nodded, too mortified to meet his eyes. This was not how she'd imagined her first real interaction with the CEO would go. After 8 months at Barrington Publishing, she'd only glimpsed him in passing, his presence announced by hushed whispers and straightened postures as he moved through the office. "Thank you, Mr. Caleb. I'll check with HR right away." He stepped aside to let her pass, but not before she caught the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. "Good luck with your presentation, Sophia. I'm looking forward to it." She nearly tripped over her own feet. He knew her name. The presentation on potential venues for the company's annual summer retreat had gone better than expected, despite Sophia's last-minute wardrobe malfunction. She had put together a comprehensive proposal for 3 possible locations, complete with detailed budgets, activity schedules, and projected outcomes for team building and company morale. When she finished speaking, there was a moment of silence before the senior management team erupted into applause. Even Rebecca, the notoriously difficult VP of marketing, seemed impressed. "Excellent work, Miss Ziegler," said Martin, the coup. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this." Sophia beamed, relief washing over her. "Thank you, sir. I believe any of these options would provide the team-building experience we're looking for while staying within budget." From the back of the room, Caleb cleared his throat, all heads turned toward him. He rarely attended these planning meetings, usually leaving the details to his executive team while he focused on bigger publishing acquisitions and author relationships. "I'd like to see more," he said, his voice carrying easily across the conference room. "These are good options, but I'm wondering if we could think outside the box a bit more. Our team has worked incredibly hard this year. We've launched 3 bestsellers and acquired that boutique literary agency. They deserve something spectacular." Sophia felt her heart rate quicken. Was he dismissing her proposal? "I can certainly explore additional venues, Mr. Barrington. I was thinking," he continued, rising from his seat, "that maybe we could take the retreat international this year. Europe, perhaps, or a private island in the Caribbean." A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. Sophia's mind raced with the logistics and the substantially higher budget such a location would require. "That sounds ambitious," she said carefully. "Ambitious is what Barrington Publishing is all about," he replied with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I'd like you to head this project, Sophia. Work directly with me on it. Think you can handle that?" 20 pairs of eyes turned to her, including those belonging to executives who'd been with the company for decades. Sophia swallowed hard. "Absolutely, sir. When would you like to start?" "How about tomorrow morning, my office, 9 a.m. He didn't wait for a response before striding out of the conference room, leaving a wake of whispers behind him. Later that afternoon, Sophia's office phone rang. "Miss Ziegler. This is Deanne from Mr. Barrington's office. He asked me to send over some files regarding the summer retreat. They'll be in your email shortly. He also wants me to confirm your meeting tomorrow morning." Yes, I'll be there, Sophia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Excellent. Oh, and he mentioned you should bring coffee, black for him, and whatever you prefer for yourself. The call ended before Sophia could respond. Coffee. Was she being called in as an events coordinator or as his assistant? She pushed aside the flicker of annoyance. This was an opportunity to work directly with the CEO, something most employees in her position would never experience. That evening, Sophia stayed late, poring over the files Caleb had sent. They contained information on exclusive resorts and retreats around the world, many with price tags that made her eyes widen. She wondered what it would be like to have that kind of money to be able to book a private island without blinking at the cost. The next morning, Sophia arrived at Caleb's office precisely at 9 a.m., carefully balancing 2 coffee cups in her portfolio. His assistant Deanne smiled knowingly as she buzzed her in. Caleb's office was exactly what one would expect of a Millionaire publisher, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions and signed copies, a massive mahogany desk, and windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The man himself stood looking out at the view, his back to the door. "Your coffee, Mr. Barrington," Sophia announced, setting the cup on his desk. He turned, and for a moment, Sophia was struck by how different he looked up close. In his early 30s, Caleb Barrington had the confidence that came from inheriting and then quadrupling his family's publishing business. But there was something else in his expression, a hint of weariness around his eyes. "Thank you," he said, taking the cup. "And remember, it's Caleb." "Right." "Caleb," she repeated, settling into the chair across from his desk. For the next hour, they discussed potential retreat locations. Sophia was surprised by his attention to detail and his genuine interest in creating an experience that would benefit the team. He wasn't just throwing money at an extravagant vacation, he wanted something meaningful. "What about you, Sophia?" he asked suddenly, interrupting her description of a resort in Bali. "If you could take the team anywhere in the world for a retreat, where would it be?" She hesitated. "That's not really my decision to make. I'm asking for your opinion," he pressed. "Forget the budget for a moment. Where would you go?" Sophia thought for a moment. "There's a place in Tuscany," she said finally. "An old vineyard estate that's been converted into a retreat center. It has everything: beautiful grounds for outdoor activities, cooking classes using local ingredients, wine tastings, of course, but it also has these incredible workshop spaces. The whole property encourages both relaxation and creativity. It feels authentic." Caleb leaned forward, his interest visibly piqued. "Do you have information on this place?" She nodded, pulling up the website on her tablet and passing it to him. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Sophia felt an unexpected jolt of electricity at the contact. Caleb scrolled through the images, his expression growing more animated. "This is perfect," he said. "This is exactly what I was looking for." "It's probably booked solid for the summer," Sophia cautioned. "Places like this usually are." A slow smile spread across his face. "Leave that to me." 3 days later, Sophia received an email confirmation. Villa Serenita in Tuscany was exclusively booked for Barrington Publishing's summer retreat. The dates were set for 6 weeks from now, which left her precious little time to coordinate everything from flights to activities to accommodation assignments. Over the following weeks, Sophia found herself spending more and more time with Caleb as they finalized the retreat plans. What had started as formal meetings in his office evolved into working lunches and late evenings poring over details in the conference room. She discovered that, beneath his imposing exterior, was a man deeply committed to his employees and passionate about literature. "My grandfather started this company with one author and a printing press in his garage," Caleb told her one evening as they were finalizing the retreat schedule. "He believed that stories had the power to change lives. My father expanded that vision, but somewhere along the way he got caught up in the business side of things." "And you?" Sophia asked, genuinely curious. Caleb leaned back in his chair, his tie loosened after a long day. "I'm trying to balance both." The business has to thrive for us to publish the books that matter, but at the end of the day, it's about the stories and the people who help tell them. Sophia nodded, understanding why the retreat meant so much to him. It wasn't just a perk or a tax write-off, it was his way of honoring the people who helped carry on his grandfather's legacy. As they worked together, Sophia began to notice small changes in how Caleb interacted with her. He brought her coffee some mornings, remembered that she preferred her sandwiches without tomatoes, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions on everything from activity schedules to which authors were trending. When she mentioned her dream of someday becoming an editor, he offered to let her sit in on an acquisition meeting. "You have good instincts," he told her afterward. "You spotted the same issues our senior editor raised." Sophia tried not to read too much into these moments. Caleb was her boss, her extremely wealthy, powerful boss, and she was simply doing her job. Still, she couldn't help the flutter in her stomach when he smiled at her, or the way she found herself putting extra effort into her appearance on days they had meetings scheduled. The night before they were set to leave for Italy, the office was abuzz with excitement. Most of the staff had already gone home to pack, but Sophia remained at her desk, triple-checking the travel arrangements and welcome packets. "You should be home packing too," came Caleb's voice from her doorway. She looked up, startled. "Just making sure everything's perfect." He stepped into her small office, glancing at the meticulously organized files on her desk. "It will be perfect because you've planned it." "You need to rest before the flight tomorrow." "I will. I just want to make sure, Sophia," he interrupted gently. "You've done an incredible job. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Come on, I'll walk you out." As they rode the elevator down together, a comfortable silence settled between them. Sophia was acutely aware of his presence beside her, the subtle scent of his cologne, the sound of his breathing. When they reached the lobby, he surprised her by placing his hand lightly on the small of her back as they walked toward the exit. "You need a ride home?" he asked as they stepped onto the sidewalk. "Oh, no thank you, I'm just a few subway stops away," he frowned slightly. "It's late." "Let me call my driver." "Really, it's fine," she insisted. "I take this route every night." He seemed about to argue but nodded instead. "Text me when you get home safely then." The request caught her off guard. "Text you?" "Yes," he said, pulling out his phone. "Let me get your number." Sophia recited her number, trying to ignore the implication that Caleb Barrington, her millionaire boss, wanted her personal contact information. It was just professional concern, she told herself. "See you tomorrow, Sophia," he said with a smile that made her heart skip. "Buona notte." His Italian pronunciation was surprisingly good, and it followed her all the way home. The journey to Tuscany was long but well coordinated, thanks to Sophia's meticulous planning. The team flew first to Rome on a chartered flight, Caleb's addition to the budget, then traveled by luxury coach to the vineyard estate. Throughout the trip, Sophia was in full coordinator mode, ensuring everyone had their boarding passes, answering questions, and keeping the group on schedule. It wasn't until they arrived at Villa Serenita that she finally allowed herself to take a breath. The estate was even more beautiful than the pictures had suggested, a sprawling stone villa surrounded by vineyards and olive groves, with the rolling hills of Tuscany stretching to the horizon. "You chose well," Caleb murmured beside her as they stood watching the staff unload luggage from the coach. Sophia smiled up at him. "It's perfect." "Almost perfect," he corrected. "There was a small issue with the room assignments," her smile faltered. "What issue?" "I double-checked everything before we left. It seems they overbooked slightly and had to give away one of our rooms. They've apologized profusely, of course." Sophia's mind raced. "That's impossible. We reserved the entire property." Apparently, there was some confusion with dates. "Don't worry, they've offered a solution. There's a small cottage on the property, the old vineyard manager's home. It's separate from the main house but supposedly very charming." "I see," Sophia said, already thinking about who she would need to relocate. "I can take the cottage then." "It makes the most sense." Caleb shook his head. I've already arranged to take it myself. As the organizer, you should be central to everything. Besides, I could use the privacy." Before she could protest, he was called away by the property manager, leaving Sophia to wonder if there had really been a booking issue at all. The first few days of the retreat were a whirlwind of activities. Sophia had scheduled team-building exercises in the morning, creative workshops in the afternoon, and leisurely dinners in the evening. The staff seemed genuinely grateful for the experience, and even the most stressed executives began to unwind in the Tuscan sunshine. Caleb was a constant presence, participating in every activity with enthusiasm and genuine interest. Sophia noticed how he made a point of speaking with every employee, remembering details about their families and interests. It was a side of him rarely seen in the office, and the staff responded to it warmly. On the third evening, after a spectacular dinner under the stars, someone suggested dancing. Tables were cleared away, a playlist was created, and soon the terrace was filled with laughing, dancing publishers and editors. Sophia watched from the sidelines, enjoying the sight of her colleagues letting loose. She was so focused on making sure everyone else was having a good time that she didn't notice Caleb approaching until he was standing right beside her. "The retreat planner should get to enjoy the retreat too," he said, extending his hand. "Dance with me," her heart leaped into her throat. "Oh, I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he confessed with a grin, "but when in Tuscany." Before she could protest further, he had taken her hand and led her onto the makeshift dance floor. The music shifted to something slower, and Caleb placed his hand on her waist, keeping a respectful distance between them as they began to move to the rhythm. "You've done an amazing job with all this," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Everyone's having the time of their lives." "That was the goal," she replied, trying to ignore how right it felt to be in his arms. "And what about you, Sophia? Are you enjoying yourself?" She looked up at him, surprised by the question. His eyes were warm in the glow of the string lights overhead, his expression genuinely concerned. "I am," she admitted. "It's beautiful here." "You're beautiful here," he said softly, then quickly added, "I mean, you look happy, it suits you?" Sophia felt her cheeks grow warm. Was Caleb Barrington flirting with her? No, that was ridiculous. He was just being nice. He was nice to everyone. As the song ended, Caleb reluctantly released her. "I should probably mingle a bit more," he said. "CEO duties." "Of course," she replied, stepping back. "I should check on the dessert service anyway." But as she walked away, she could feel his eyes following her, and something in his gaze made her wonder if perhaps there was more to his interest than professional courtesy. The next morning, Sophia rose early and went for a walk through the vineyard. The sun was just beginning to peek over the hills, casting a golden glow across the rows of grapevines. She breathed deeply, savoring the tranquility before another busy day of coordinating activities. "You're up early," came Caleb's voice from behind her. She turned to find him walking toward her, dressed casually in jeans and a simple t-shirt that somehow looked expensive on him. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through it, and the effect was disconcertingly attractive. "I wanted to see the sunrise," she explained. "It's so peaceful here." He fell into step beside her. "I had the same idea. I've been staying up late dealing with some business back home, so I haven't had much chance to explore the grounds." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following the path between the vineyard rows. Sophia was acutely aware of his presence beside her, the rhythm of his footsteps, the occasional brush of his arm against hers. "Can I show you something?" he asked suddenly. "Sure," she replied, curious. He led her off the main path, through a section of olive trees until they reached a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone well, covered in climbing roses and morning glory. "I found this yesterday during my afternoon walk," he explained. "The property manager said it dates back to the 16th century. Supposedly, if you make a wish and drop a coin in, it comes true." Sophia smiled. "That sounds like something they tell tourists to collect extra cash." Caleb laughed. a genuine sound that she realized she'd rarely heard before. Probably, but there's something appealing about the idea, isn't there? That wishes can come true in a place like this. He pulled 2 coins from his pocket and handed one to her. Humor me. Sophia took the coin, their fingers brushing in the exchange. What should I wish for? That's between you and the well, he said with a wink. She closed her eyes, feeling slightly foolish but charmed by the moment. What did she want most? The answer came more easily than expected. To be seen for who she really was, not just as the efficient events coordinator, but as a woman with dreams and desires of her own. She dropped the coin into the well, hearing the distant splash as it hit the water below. When she opened her eyes, she found Caleb watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Did you make your wish?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I did." "Are you going to tell me what it was?" A slow smile spread across his face. "If I tell you, it won't come true." The moment was interrupted by the sound of Sophia's phone ringing. She reluctantly pulled it from her pocket to see a message from the catering team about a last-minute change to the lunch menu. "Duty calls," she sighed. "Go ahead," Caleb said. "I'll catch up with you later." As she hurried back toward the villa, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them in that quiet moment by the well. The retreat continued smoothly, with each day bringing new activities and experiences for the team. Sophia found herself constantly busy, yet Caleb seemed to always be nearby, offering help when needed, making her laugh during stressful moments, bringing her coffee in the mornings just the way she liked it. On the second to last evening, a special dinner had been arranged in the villa's wine cellar, a cavernous space lined with oak barrels and hundreds of bottles. The long table was set with candles and fresh flowers, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the size of the group. Sophia was surprised when she found her place card next to Caleb's at the head of the table. Usually, she sat somewhere in the middle, better positioned to oversee service and address any issues that might arise. "I hope you don't mind," Caleb said as he pulled out her chair. "I thought you deserved the best seat in the house, given how hard you've worked to make this retreat a success." Throughout dinner, Sophia found herself engaged in easy conversation with Caleb. They discussed books they loved, places they'd traveled, dreams they had for the future. It felt natural, as if they'd known each other for years rather than months. "I never asked," he said as they shared a tiramisu for dessert. "What made you want to go into publishing?" "Books were my escape growing up," she replied honestly. "My parents divorced when I was young, and I spent a lot of time moving between their homes. Books were the one constant. They went wherever I went." Caleb nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What was your favorite as a child?" "The Secret Garden," she answered without hesitation. "I loved the idea of finding something beautiful that had been forgotten and bringing it back to life." "That's what you've done with this retreat," he said softly. "You've created something beautiful for everyone." Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, Sophia forgot they were surrounded by their colleagues. In the warm glow of the candles, with the rich scent of wine and earth around them, it felt as if they were the only 2 people in the world. The spell was broken when one of the executives asked Caleb a question about next quarter's publishing schedule, drawing him reluctantly back into a business conversation. Later that night, as the group made their way back to their rooms, Caleb pulled Sophia aside in the villa's courtyard. "Would you like to see the cottage?" he asked. "I realized you've been coordinating this whole retreat but haven't seen all the accommodation options." She hesitated. It was late, and going to his private quarters seemed decidedly unprofessional. Yet something in his expression told her this wasn't merely a tour offer. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. The cottage was set apart from the main villa, nestled among cypress trees at the edge of the property. It was small but charming, with stone walls covered in ivy and a wooden door that looked centuries old. "It's beautiful," Sophia remarked as Caleb led her inside. The interior was rustic but elegant, exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace, comfortable furnishings in neutral tones. A bottle of wine sat open on the kitchen counter alongside 2 glasses. "I was just having a nightcap," Caleb explained, gesturing to the wine. "Would you like to join me?" Sophia nodded, suddenly nervous. This felt different from their professional interactions or even their friendly conversations during the retreat. This felt like something more. Caleb poured her a glass of wine and led her to the small terrace outside. They sat side by side on a stone bench, looking out at the moonlit vineyard. "I have a confession to make," he said after a moment of comfortable silence. Sophia took a sip of her wine. "What's that?" "There was never an overbooking issue with the rooms. I requested the cottage specifically." She turned to look at him, surprised by his honesty. "Why?" "Because I wanted somewhere private where I could invite you for a glass of wine without 20 curious employees watching our every move," he admitted, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "I've been wanting to get to know you better, Sophia. Away from the office, away from job titles and professional boundaries." Her heart raced at his words. "You have—" Caleb set his wine glass down and turned to face her fully. "From the moment you spilled coffee on your blouse and handled it with such grace, I knew there was something special about you. Working with you these past weeks has only confirmed that. But you're my boss," she said softly, stating the obvious obstacle between them. "I'm aware of the complications," he acknowledged, "which is why I've been hesitant to say anything, but being here, seeing you in this setting, I couldn't keep pretending I'm not attracted to you." The confession hung in the air between them. Sophia tried to process what was happening. Caleb Barrington, Millionaire publisher, her boss, the man she'd been secretly admiring for weeks, was telling her he had feelings for her. "Say something," he urged when her silence stretched too long. Instead of speaking, Sophia leaned forward and gently pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, questioning, but when Caleb's hand came up to cup her cheek, it deepened into something more certain, more passionate. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you presented those retreat options in the conference room." Sophia laughed softly. "Even with the coffee-stained blouse, especially with the coffee-stained blouse," he teased. "You were so focused on making everything perfect, so dedicated." It was incredibly attractive. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories and dreams that had nothing to do with publishing or retreats. Sophia learned that despite his wealth, Caleb lived a relatively simple life, preferred paperbacks to e-books, and secretly dreamed of writing a novel someday. He learned that she was teaching herself Italian, had a weakness for old movie musicals, and volunteered at a literacy program on weekends. As the night grew late, Caleb walked her back to her room in the main villa, careful to avoid being seen by any night owl colleagues. At her door, he kissed her again, this time with a promise of more to come. "What happens when we go back to New York?" she asked, voicing the concern that had been nagging at her. "I don't know exactly," he admitted. "But I know I don't want this to be just a vacation romance. We'll figure it out together if you're willing." Sophia nodded. "I'm willing." The final day of the retreat arrived too quickly. As the team gathered for their last breakfast on the terrace, the mood was both content and wistful. Many exchanged email addresses with newfound friends from different departments, promising to have lunch back in New York. Caleb stood to give a closing speech, thanking everyone for their participation and hard work. When he acknowledged Sophia's contribution to the retreat's success, the entire team gave her a standing ovation, bringing unexpected tears to her eyes. "None of this would have been possible without Sophia's vision and dedication," Caleb said, his gaze finding hers across the terrace. "She showed us that sometimes the most meaningful experiences come from authentic places." After breakfast, as the team began boarding the coaches that would take them back to Rome for their flight home, Caleb pulled Sophia aside. "I have one more surprise," he said, handing her an envelope. She opened it to find 2 first-class tickets to New York dated for 2 days later than the group's return. I thought maybe you'd like to stay a little longer, he explained. Just the two of us. No retreat to coordinate, no colleagues to impress, just us getting to know each other better. Sophia's heart swelled with happiness. I'd like that very much. Good, he said, his smile reflecting her own joy, because I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our story. 6 months later, Barrington Publishing's winter party was abuzz with rumors about the CEO and the event's coordinator, who had seemingly fallen in love during the summer retreat in Tuscany. Some claimed they'd seen them kissing in the vineyard, while others insisted it had started long before that, right in the office. Sophia, now the newly appointed Director of Special Projects, a position created to utilize her talents while avoiding any direct reporting relationship to Caleb, simply smiled at the speculation. She and Caleb had been careful to keep their relationship professional at work, but they no longer hid the fact that they were together. As she stood adjusting a centerpiece on one of the tables, Caleb approached from behind, slipping his arm around her waist when he was sure no one was watching too closely. "The party looks amazing," he murmured. "But then I expected nothing less from you." She turned in his arms. "This one was easy compared to planning an international retreat. Speaking of which," he said, reaching into his pocket, "I have something for you." He pulled out a small, worn coin, the same one she'd tossed into the wishing well in Tuscany. "How did you? I may have bribed the groundskeeper to fish it out before we left," he admitted with a grin. "I wanted a souvenir of the moment I knew for sure I was falling in love with you." Sophia's heart skipped. "And what about your coin, the one for your wish?" "I don't need it anymore," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "My wish already came true." He leaned down to kiss her, no longer concerned about who might see. Their love story, which had begun with spilled coffee and blossomed among Tuscan vineyards, was now an open book, one they were writing together, page by beautiful page.